ladies and gentlemen of all ages, boys and girls. Thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Angry Meat Production. We appreciate you coming in and letting us be a part of your lives week in and week out. We hope to do our best to present you with something that your eardrums delight in. Whether you're looking at us on YouTube or Rumble, or listening to us on Spotify, Google, or Anchor, or any of the other podcast services that we are currently on or trying to get on, we thank you. And if you don't mind, at the end of every episode, stop by, leave us a comment, leave us a like. If it asks for 5 stars, we'll take 5 stars, even if you don't like us. 5 stars are what it's all about. With that being said, we hope you enjoy our attempt to make our advocation our vocation. Ladies and gentlemen, let the games begin.
Welcome, Angry Faithful. Today we're gonna have a little disclaimer on this, because this thing we're gonna talk about the I forgot to do that.
Nanjing Massacre.
Nanjing Massacre.
Yeah, so be aware, people, that the visual, there's not going to be so much visual, but the picture that we're going to be painting could be traumatic. Definitely talking about the cases of mass rape. It may be, for lack of a better term, triggering for some of our audience. So,
yes, is
listener discretion advised.
Yes, especially on this one. This is the world's worst massacre known to man. The capital of the Republic of China, immediately after the Battle of Nanking and the Second Sino-Japan War by the Emperor Japanese Army, began on December 13th, 1937. The massacre lasted 6 weeks. Just to paint a picture, all the war crimes such as mass rape, looting, arson, the massacre was one of the worst atrocities committed during World War II. And that's combined with the stuff that the Nazis did. Due to the merit of factors, the death toll is estimated to 40,000 to over 300,000, with the rape cases ranging from 20,000 to over 80,000 cases. However, most credible scholars in Japan, which includes a large number of authoritative academics,
authoritative academics. Yeah, there you
go. Supported the utility of International Military Tribunal for the Far East, and its findings were estimated to at least 200,000 murders and at least 20,000 cases of rape.
All right. Now, in August of 1937, the Japanese army invaded Shanghai. They met strong resistance. They suffered heavy casualties. It was a bloodbath on both sides. There was a battle of attrition, urban hand-to-hand combat. And by mid-November, the Japanese had captured Shanghai with the help of naval and aerial bombardment. The General Staff headquarters in Tokyo initially decided not to expand the war due to the high casualties incurred and the low morale of the troops. Nevertheless, on December 1st, headquarters ordered the Central China Area Army and 10th Army to capture Nanking, then capital of the Republic of China. Now, after losing the Battle of Shanghai, Chiang Kai-shek there we go, knew that the fall of Nanking was a matter of time. He and his staff had gotten together and they realized that they couldn't risk the annihilation of their elite troops in a symbolic but hopeless defense of the capital. So to preserve the army for future battles, most of it was withdrawn. Now, Chiang Kai's strategy was to follow the suggestion of his German advisors to draw the Japanese army deep into China and use China's vast territory as a defensive strength. Shanghai planned to fight a protracted war of attrition to wear down the Japanese in the hinterland of China. Now, the thing about attrition battles is you don't necessarily need to win a battle of numbers. Um, you can employ small unit tactics, harassing guerrilla warfare, and you can wear down large elements to the point where you either eliminate their combat effectiveness by getting them down past a certain percentage of manpower, or you can just destroy the morale and the mental state of the attacking army. But the strategy for the defense of Nanking, in a press release to foreign reporters, Tang Shengshai announced that the city would not surrender and would fight to the death. Now, Tang gathered about 100,000 soldiers, largely untrained, so he's just grabbing dudes off the street, including Chinese troops who had participated in the Battle of Shanghai. The Chinese government left for relocation on December 1, and the president left on December 7th, leaving the fate of Nanking to an international committee led by John Rabe, a German national. Now, in an attempt to secure permission for the ceasefire from Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, Rabe, who was living in Nanking and had been acting as the chairman of the Nanking International Safety Zone Committee, boarded the USS Panay on December 9th. Now, from this gunboat, Rabe sent 2 telegrams. The first was to Shanghai through an American ambassador in Hankow, asking that the Chinese forces undertake no military operations within Nanking. Second telegram was sent through Shanghai to the Japanese military leaders, advocating for a 3-day ceasefire so that the Chinese could withdraw from the city. Now, the following day, on December 10th, Rabe got his answer from the Generalissimo. The American ambassador in Hankow replied that although he supported Rabe's proposal for a ceasefire, Shanghai didn't. Rabe says that the ambassador also, quote, sent us a separate confidential telegram telling us that he has been officially informed by the foreign ministry in Hankow that our understanding that General Tang agreed to a 3-day armistice and the withdrawal of his troops from Nanking is mistaken. And moreover, that Chiang Kai-shek had announced that he's not in a position to accept such an offer. And this rejection of the committee's ceasefire plan in Rabe's mind sealed the fate of the city. Now, Nanking had been constantly bombed for days, and the Chinese troops that remained there were disheartened and had taken to drinking before the city's inevitable fall. And on December 11th, Rabe found that the Chinese soldiers were still residing in areas of the safety zone, meaning that it had become an intended target for Japanese attacks, despite the majority being innocent civilians. Now, Rabe commented on how efforts to remove these Chinese troops failed, and Japanese soldiers began to lob grenades into the refugee zone. Now, once Nanking and Shanghai, they started, they fell to the Japanese. For lack of a better term, the Japanese had no chill. So, when you're emboldened and you feel like as though you're not going to be persecuted on any level for some of the actions that you as a leader or your subordinates are going to take, you just kind of turn a blind eye, and whatever happens, and it's all done for the glory of the emperor. Now, although massacre is generally described as having occurred over a 6-week period after the fall of Nanking, the crimes committed by the Japanese army were not limited to that period. Now, many atrocities were reported to have been committed as the Japanese army advanced from Shanghai to Nanking. Now, according to one Japanese journalist embedded with imperial forces at the time, the reason that the 10th Army is advancing to Nanking quite rapidly is due to the tactic consistent among the officers and men that they could loot and rape as they wish. So, you give basically an army that has been disconnected from civilization and improper behavioral etiquettes for long enough, and you get it to the point where they're already disheartened after the Battle of Shanghai because of the massive number of casualties that they were taking. So they feel as though they're owed one, right? So you give these soldiers the opportunity to do as they please as
Basically
they're
go hog
fighting.
wild.
Yeah. I mean, you take off the gloves. So, in his novel, Akirato Ietei, which is translated to living soldiers, Tanzao Ishikawa vividly describes how the 16th Division of the Shanghai Expeditionary Force committed atrocities on the march between Shanghai and Nanking. The novel itself was based on interviews that Ishikawa conducted with troops in Nanking in January of 1938. Now, perhaps the most notorious atrocity was a killing contest between two Japanese officers, as reported in the Tokyo Nichi Shimbun, in the English language Japanese advertiser. Contest, a race between two officers to see who could kill 100 people first using only a sword, was covered much like a sporting event, with regular updates on the score over a series of days. Now, in Japan, the veracity of the newspaper article about the contest was the subject of ferocious debate over several decades, starting in 1967. In 2000, historian Bob Tadashi, I'm going to try not to butcher this, Wakabayashi, I think I did a good job right there, concurred with certain Japanese scholars who had argued that the contest was a concocted story with the conclusion of the soldiers themselves for the purpose of raising the national fighting spirit. Now, if that doesn't spell whitewash, I
Yeah.
don't know. But and in 2005, a Tokyo district judge dismissed a suit by the families of the lieutenants, stating the lieutenants admitted the fact that they raced to kill 100 people and that the story cannot be proven to be clearly false. The judge also ruled against the civil claim of the plaintiffs because the original article was more than 60 years old, and the historicity of the events remains disputed in Japan. So clearly, you would think that the families of these two lieutenants kind of wear that as a like a badge of honor kind of sort of thing. And I mean, they're wanting it to be accredited. They want it to be submitted into record for posterity as part of the authorized account of the war. My take on that is two different sides. One, it's family members that are involved, so it's almost a matter of honor and pride for them. And two, I kind of look at it from the prism of Winston Churchill, who said, "Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it." So when you have stories like this in historical record that's available to study, to learn, and to ultimately learn from, we have a almost I would say is about as close to a firsthand account of the depravity one human being is willing to do to another for the sake of one cause or another. And it would give us the ability to correct that course, not necessarily to erase it from ever, having happened, but to more or less be a deterrent from it ever happening again. Now, will we see things like this in the future? I don't know. We can only hope that we don't. However, again, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So if we don't study what the Japanese did in their theater of the war, we'll never learn. And we'll never adopt a more, for lack of a better term, we will never adopt a more humane way of waging war. I mean, I know that that's kind of an oxymoron, but to me, it's a means to an end. We need that kind of dark chapter in human history being to be recorded as accurately as possible.
so that we can learn from it, so that way we can try to prevent it from ever taking place again.
Exactly. And that's the reason, the whole reason why I ended up doing this one was because they found a book that had a lot of the atrocities in it. And they're trying to give it to a museum so they can go through it and put up there of what horrible things had occurred during this time frame. So we don't repeat that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the night Nanking garrison force set fire to buildings, houses, and areas close to Stephen Hawking voice. Xiaquin to the north, as well as the inversions of east, south, and southern city gates, targets within the outside of the city walls, such as military barracks, private homes, and Chinese Ministry of Communication. Forests and even entire villages were completely burnt down at an estimate value of $20 to $30 million, 1937 timeframe. Many Westerners were living in the city at the time, conducting trade and missionary trips. As the Japanese army approached Nanking, most of them fled the city, leaving 27 foreigners. 5 of these were journalists who remained in the city for a few days after it was captured, leaving the city on December 16th. 15 of the remaining 22 foreigners formed a committee called the National Committee for Nanking Safety Zone in the western quarter of the city. German businessman John Rabe was elected its leader, in parts because of his status as a member of the Nazi Party and existence of German Japanese Braille anti
The bilateral anti Comternet or Comternet Cominternat or pact rather.
The Japanese government had previously agreed not to attack parts of the city that did not contain Chinese military forces, and members of the committee managed to persuade the Chinese government to remove their troops out of the area. The Nanking Safety Zone was demarcated.
Yeah, good.
Through the use of the Red Cross flags. On December 1st, 1937, Nanking Mayor, we're going to use that again.
Mao Chao-chun
ordered all Chinese citizens to remain in Nanking to move into the safety zone. Many fled the city on December 7th, and the International Committee took over as a de facto government of Nanking. Prince Ashoka appointed as commander. In the memorandum or the palace rolls,
Hirohito
signed Prince Yuramoshika.
Prince Yoshiko Asaka out for censure as one of the imperial kinsmen whose attitude was not good. He assigned Asaka to Nanking as an opportunity to make amends.
On December 5th, Asaka left Tokyo by plane and arrived in the front at the front 3 days later. He met with the division of commanders, Lieutenant General. Gosh, I knew this was going to be one of those things, and I'm going to have
Hisago Nakajima.
Okay.
And Hisuke Yangawa,
who informed him that the Japanese troops had almost completely surrounded 300,000 Chinese troops in the vicinity of Nanking, and the preliminary negotiations suggested that the Chinese were ready to surrender. Prince Ashoka issued an order to kill all the captives. thus proving official sanction for the crimes which took place during and after the battle. Some authors recorded that Prince Asuka signed the order for Japanese soldiers in Nanking to kill all captives. Other assert
that Lieutenant Colonel Isamu Cho,
Ahsoka's Asada camp sent the order under the prince's signed manual without the prince's knowledge or assessment. Nevertheless, even if Cho took the initiative, Ahsoka was normally the officer in charge and gave no orders to stop the carnage. While the extent of Prince Ahsoka responsibility for the massacre remains a matter of debate, the ultimate sanction for the massacre and the crimes committed during the invasion of China were issued in Emperor Hirohito. Ratification of Japanese Army's proposal to remove the constant of
international law. Yeah, sorry, I'll be quiet now.
On the treatment of Chinese prisoners on August 5th, 1937. You know, every time I'm reading a Princess Ahsoka, I'm thinking freaking Avatar. I know it's like totally off bases and everything like that.
It's Ahsoka, but you're saying Ahsoka, and I'm thinking Star Wars.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so strange.
But yeah, so I mean, let me clean my fingers here. I'm stuffing my face. I just walked in the door before we started filming tonight, and I'm eating dinner. But so the Japanese military continued to move forward, breaching the last lines of Chinese resistance and arriving outside the city gates of Nanking on December 9th. Now, at noon on December 9th, the Japanese military dropped leaflets into the city, urging the city of Nanking to surrender within 24 hours, promising no mercy if the offer was refused. And in the meantime, members of the committee contacted Tang and proposed a plan for a three-day ceasefire, during which the Chinese troops could withdraw without fighting while the Japanese troops would stay in their present position. Now, John Ray boarded a U.S. gunboat Panay on December 9th and sent 2 telegrams, one to Chiang Kai-shek and the other, by the way, the American ambassador in Hankow, and one to the Japanese military authority in Shanghai. Now, with the assault and capture of Nanking, the Japanese awaited an answer for their demand to surrender, but no response was received from the Chinese by the deadline on December 10th. General Ioane Matsui waited another hour before issuing the command to take Nanking by force. The Japanese army mounted its assault on Nanking on the Nanking walls from multiple directions, with the SEF's 16th Division attacked 3 gates on the eastern side. The 6th Division of the 10A launched its offensive on the western walls, from the SEF's 9th Division advanced into the area in between. Now, on December 12th, under heavy artillery fire and aerial bombardment, General General Tang Shang-chi ordered his men to retreat. And what followed was nothing short of chaos. Some Chinese soldiers stripped civilians of their clothing in a desperate attempt to blend in, and many others were shot by the Chinese supervisory unit as they tried to flee. And on December 13th, the 6th and the 116th Divisions of the Japanese Army were the first to enter the city, facing little military resistance. Simultaneously, the 9th Division entered nearby Guanga Gate, and the 16th Division entered through the Zhoushan and Taiping gates. The same afternoon, 2 small Japanese Navy fleets arrived on both sides of the Yangtze River. Now, Japanese troops pursued the retreating Chinese army units, primarily in the Zhangking area. I remember Stephen Hawking saying that.
Yeah.
To the north of the city walls and around the Zhejiang Mountain in the east. Now, although most of the sources suggest that the final phase rather of the battle consisted of a one-sided slaughter of Chinese troops by the Japanese, some Japanese historians maintain that the remaining Chinese military still posed a serious threat to the Japanese. Now, Prince Yakashiko Asaka told a war correspondent later that he was in a very perilous position when his headquarters was ambushed by Chinese forces that were in the midst of fleeing from Nanking east of the city. Now, on the other side of the city, the 11th Company of the 45th Regiment encountered some 20,000 Chinese soldiers who were making their way from Zankon. The Japanese army conducted its mopping up operation both inside and outside the Nanking safety zone. Now, since the area outside the safety zone had been almost completely evacuated, the mopping up effort was concentrated in the safety zone. Now, this zone was an area of 3.85 square kilometers and was packed with the remaining population of Nanking. Japanese army leadership assigned sections of the safety zone to some units to separate alleged plainclothes soldiers from the civilians. The number of Chinese soldiers in plainclothes that were executed is estimated to be around 4,000.
With the relocation of the capital of China and the reports of Japanese brutality, most of the civilian population fled Nanking out of fear. Wealthy families were the first to flee, leaving Nanking in automobiles, followed by the evacuation of middle class and then the poor. While only the destitute lower class, such as ethnic Taka boat people, remained behind. More of the three-quarters of the population had fled Nanking before the Japanese arrived. From December 13th, 1937, and the Japanese army engaged in random murder, wartime rape, looting, arson, and other war crimes, such as crimes continued from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the types of the crime. The first 3 weeks were more intense. A group of foreign
expatriates
headed by Rabe, had formed a 15-man international committee for the Nanking safety zone on November 22nd, mapping out the Nanking safety zone in order to safeguard citizens in the city. The massacre contest in 1937.
The Osaka Manchi Shimbun and its sister newspaper, the Tokyo Nichi Shimbun,
covered a contest between the two Japanese officers,
Toshaki Mokai and Toyoshi Noda
of the Japanese 16th Division. The two men, if you watching this on YouTube, we're just giving each other high fives because yes. Two men were described as vying to be the first to kill 100 people with a sword before the capture of Nanking. From Zhongrong and Tangsun, two cities in Jingshan province, China, Muqing had killed 89 people, while Nad had killed 78. The contest continued because neither had killed 100 people. By the time they arrived at Zing Mountain, Node had killed 105 people, while Muqing had killed 106. Both officers superbly surpassed their goal during the heat of the battle, making it impossible to determine which officer actually won the contest. Therefore, according to the journalist Asumi Kuzo and
Suzuki Hiro,
thank you, writing in the Tokyo Nichi Shimbun of December 13th, they decided to begin another contest to kill 150 people after the surrender of Japan. After the surrender of Japan in 1945, I messed that up.
Ukai and Noda were both arrested and tried as war criminals, and both of them were found guilty and executed by shooting on 28 January 1948.
Evidence
Now,
collected.
yeah, go ahead.
What were you going to say?
No, I was just gonna go, but go for it.
The Japanese either destroyed or concealed important documents. Several reducing the amount of evidence available for the confiscation. Between the declaration of ceasefire in August 15th, 1945, and the arrival of American troops in Japan on August 28th, the Japanese military and civilian authorities systematically destroyed military, naval, and government archives, such as which was from the period of 1942 to 1945. Overseas troops in the Pacific and East Asia were ordered to destroy incriminating evidence of war crimes. Approximately 70% of the Japanese army wartime records were destroyed. In regards to Nanjing Massacre, Japanese authority deliberately concealed war crime records, looting, confiscation from American authorities. Some of the concealed information was made public a few decades later. For example, 2 volumes collected from military documents related to Nanjing operations was published in 1989, and distributed experts from, I can't even say that word. Hold on. I got it. Stephen Hawking voice, save us again.
Kiseigo Nakajima.
Kisei Nakajima.
What he said.
A commander of Nanjing.
They're coming right for us.
Was, God damn it, Johnny. Was published in the early 1980s.
This is why you shouldn't smoke, kids.
Okay, off topic. I seen a freaking video. I don't know if I gave it sent that to you or not. There's this guy that was talking like that, but there's a little kid out in the back and going. I was like, I shouldn't laugh at this, but I laughed at it. He was in the room while the guy was talking. Kinji, a chemical worker in Japan, began to curate a collection of wartime diaries from Japanese veterans who fought in the Battle of Nanking in 1937. In 1994, nearly 20 diaries in his collection were published, which became an important source of evidence for the massacre. Official war journals and diaries were also published by Keigoza, an organization retired Japanese military veterans. In early 1980, after interviewing Chinese survivors and reviewing Japanese records, Japanese journalist Honda Katsuchi claimed that the Nanjing Massacre was not an isolated case. Sorry. And that Japanese authorities atrocities against Chinese were commonly throughout the lower Yangtze River since the Battle of Shanghai. His claims have been collaborated with the diaries of other medics and combatants who fought in China. Oh God, that fucking picture. Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So you want me to take over?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, again, I'm still eating dinner. Hold on.
I'll start it.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna move this a little bit so
they've stuck around long enough. They can wait for me to take a swig of my tea. All right.
Yeah. No, I literally had to put the rest of the stuff so I didn't see that picture because oh my God.
Oh yeah, where you can see the shadow from whatever it was they stuck in her.
No, I know what they stuck in her. It was a bayonet.
Yeah. But anyway,
and just I these pictures that are coming up for this, and you're Googling, anybody that wants to see these photos, go ahead. The atrocities on these, though, are, I will describe it. What it was they used bayonets, bamboos, and other objects to
bottles. I mean, there's all kinds. Anyway, so all right, so
everything to as a facet of the rapes.
now the International Military Tribunal for the Far East established that 20,000 women, including some children and the elderly, were raped during the occupation, with Yale University claiming over 80,000 rapes. A large number of rapes were done systematically by the Japanese soldiers as they went from door to door searching for girls, with many women being captured in gang rape. The women were often killed immediately after being raped, often through explicit mutilation, such as by penetrating vaginas with bayonets, long sticks of bamboo, and other objects. Now, on 19 December 37, the Reverend James M. McCallum wrote in his diary, "I know not where to end. Never have I heard or read such brutality. Rape, rape, rape. We estimate at least 1,000 cases a night and many by day. In case of resistance or anything that seems like disapproval, there is a bayonet stab or a bullet. People are hysterical. Women are being carried off every morning, afternoon, and evening. The whole Japanese army seems to be free to go and come as it pleases and do whatever it pleases." On March 7th of 1938, Robert Wilson, a surgeon at the University Hospital in the safety zone administered by the United States, wrote in a letter to his family, a conservative estimate of people slaughtered in cold blood is somewhere about 100,000, including, of course, thousands of soldiers that had thrown down their arms. Here are two excerpts from his letters of 15 and 18 December of 37 to his family. "The slaughter of civilians is appalling. I could go on for pages telling cases of rape and brutality almost beyond belief. 2 bayoneted corpses are the only survivors of 7 street cleaners who were sitting in their headquarters when the Japanese came in without warning or reason and killed 5 of their number and wounded the 2 that found their way to the hospital. Let me recount some instances occurring in the last 2 days. Last night, the house of one of the Chinese staff members of the university was broken into, and 2 of the women, his relatives, were raped. 2 girls, about 16, were raped to death in one of the refugee camps. In the university middle school, where there are 8,000 people, the Japs came in 10 times last night. Over the wall, stole food, clothing, and raped until they were satisfied. They bayoneted one little boy of 8 who had 5 bayonet wounds, including one that penetrated his stomach. A portion of omenton was outside the abdomen. I think he will live." Omenton is the large apron-like fold of visceral bacterium that hangs down from the stomach. It extends from the greater curvature of the stomach, passing in front of the small intestines, and doubles back to ascend to the transverse colon before reaching back. So, just that way, everybody was clear on that one. His diary kept during the aggression against the city and its occupation by the Imperial Japanese Army. The leader of the safety zone, John Rabe, wrote many comments about Japanese atrocities for 17 December. 2 Japanese soldiers have climbed over the garden wall and were about to break into our house. When I appear, they give the excuse that they saw 2 Chinese soldiers climb over the wall. When I show them my party badge, they return the same way. In one of the houses in the narrow street behind my garden wall, a woman was raped and then wounded in the neck with a bayonet. I managed to get an ambulance so we could take her to Kalu Hospital. Last night, up to 1,000 women and girls are said to have been raped. About 100 girls at Jingling College alone. You hear nothing but rape. Husbands or brothers intervene, they're shot. What you hear and see on all sides is the brutality and bestiality of the Japanese soldiers. In a documentary film about the Nanking Massacre, In the Name of the Emperor, former Japanese soldier named Shiro Azuma spoke candidly about the process of rape and murder in Nanking. At first, we used some kinky words like pikanenken. Pi means hip, and can means look. Paikankan, now I know how to say it properly. Paikankan means let's see a woman open up her legs. Chinese women didn't wear underpants. Instead, they wore trousers tied with a string. There was no belt. As we pulled the string, the buttocks were exposed. We paikankan. We looked. After a while, we would say something like, it's my day to take a bath. We took turns raping them. It would be all right if we only raped them. I shouldn't say all right, but we always stabbed and killed them because dead bodies don't talk. Iris Cheng, author of The Rape of Nanking, wrote one of the most comprehensive accounts of Japanese war atrocities in China. In her book, she estimated the number of Chinese women raped by Japanese soldiers ranged from 20,000 to 80,000. Chang also states that not all rape victims were women. Some Chinese men were sodomized and forced to perform repulsive sex acts. And there were also accounts of Japanese troops coercing families to commit incestuous acts. Sons were coerced into raping their mothers. Fathers were forced to rape their daughters, and brothers were forced to rape their sisters. Instead of punishing the Japanese troops who were responsible for wholesale rape, the Japanese Expeditionary Force in central China issued an order to set up comfort houses during this period of time. Yoshikai, a prominent history professor at Chao University, observes, because Japan was afraid of criticism from China, the United States of America and Europe, following the case of massive rapes between the battles in Shanghai and Nanking. Now, for about 3 weeks, since December 13th of 1937, the Imperial Japanese Army entered the Nanking safety zone to search for former Chinese soldiers hidden among refugees. Many innocent men were misidentified and killed. The death toll of civilians is difficult to precisely calculate due to the many bodies deliberately burnt, buried in mass graves, or dumped into the Yangtze River. Robert O. Wilson, a physician, testified that the cases of gun wounds continued to come in to the hospital of the University of Nanking for a matter of some 6 or 7 weeks following the fall of the city on December 13th of 37. The capacity of the hospital was normally 100 to 180 beds, and this was kept full to overflowing during this entire period. B. Campbell described the Nanking Massacre as a genocide, given the fact that residents were still slaughtered en masse during the aftermath, despite the successful and certain outcome in battle. However, Jean-Louis Margolin does not believe that the Nanking atrocities should be considered a genocide, because only prisoners of war were executed in a systematic manner, and the targeting civilians was sporadic and done without orders by individual actors. On December 13th of 1937, John Rabe wrote in his diary, quote, "It is not until we tour the city that we learn the extent of destruction. We come across corpses every 100 to 200 yards. The bodies of civilians that I examined had bullet holes in their backs. These people had presumably been fleeing and were shot from behind. The Japanese marched through the city in groups of 10 to 20 soldiers and loot the shops. I watched with my own eyes as they looted the cafe of our German baker, Herr Kessling. Penfold's hotel was broken into as well, and was almost every shop on Chongsheng and Taiping Road. On 10 February of 1938, Legation Secretary of the German Embassy, Rosen, wrote to his foreign ministry about the film made in December by Reverend John Maggie to recommend its purchase. During the Japanese reign of terror in Nanking, which, by the way, continues to this day to a considerable degree, the Reverend John Maggie, a member of the American Episcopal Church Mission, who has been here for almost a quarter of a century, took motion pictures that eloquently bear witness to the atrocities committed by the Japanese. One will have to wait and see whether the highest officers in the Japanese army succeed, as they have indicated, in stopping the atrocities of their troops, which continue even today. On December 13th, about 30 soldiers came to a Chinese house at number 5, Ising Lao Ku, in the southeastern part of Nanking, and demanded entrance. The door was opened by the landlord, a Mohammedan named Ha. Mohammedan, it's Islam being practiced in China. They killed him immediately with a revolver, and also Mrs. Ha, who knelt before them after Ha's death, begging them not to kill anyone else. Mrs. Ha asked them why they had killed her husband, and they shot her. Mrs. Haisea was dragged out from under a table in the guest hall where she had tried to hide with her 1-year-old baby. After being stripped and raped by one or more men, she was bayoneted in the chest and then had a bottle thrust into her vagina. The baby was killed with a bayonet. Some soldiers went on into the next room where Mrs. Hasea's parents, aged 76 and 74, and her 2 daughters, aged 16 and 14, were. They were about to rape the girls when the grandmother tried to protect them. Soldiers killed her with a revolver. Grandfather grasped the body of his wife and was killed. The 2 girls were then stripped, the elder being raped by 2 to 3 men and the younger by 3. The elder girl was stabbed afterwards, and a cane was rammed in her vagina. The younger girl was bayoneted, but was also spared the horrible treatment that had been meted out to her sister and mother. The soldiers then bayoneted another sister of between 7 and 8, who was also in the room. The last murders in the house were of Ha's 2 children, aged 2 and 4 respectively. The older was bayoneted and the younger split down through the head with a sword. Now, on February 5th of 2009, the Japanese Supreme Court ordered Shishudo Kagaishino and the publisher of Tenshada to pay 4 million yen in damages to Mrs. Shakin Jay, who claims to be the 7 or 8-year-old girl who appears in Maggie's film. Hagashiana Akanyo had claimed in his book through review of Nanking, a thorough review of Nanjing Massacre, that she and the girl were different persons, and that she was not a witness of the Nanjing Massacre, but he was unable to prove this at trial. Pregnant women were targeted for murder, as their stomachs were often bayoneted, sometimes after rape. Tang Xunshan, survivor and witness of one of the Japanese Army's systematic mass killings, testified. The 7th and last person in the first row was a pregnant woman. The soldier thought he might as well rape her before killing her, so he pulled her out of the group to a spot about 10 meters away. As he was trying to rape her, the woman resisted fiercely. Soldier abruptly stabbed her in the belly with a bayonet. She gave a final scream as her intestines spilled out. Then the soldier stabbed the fetus with its umbilical cord clearly visible, and tossed it aside. According to Navy veteran Sho Matani, the Army used a trumpet sound that meant kill all Chinese who run away. Thousands were led away and mass executed in an excavation known as the 10,000 Corpse Ditch, a trench measuring about 300 meters long and 5 meters wide. Since records were not kept, estimates regarding the number of victims buried in the ditch range from 4,000 to 20,000. However, most scholars and historians consider the number to be more than 12,000 victims. The Hui people, a minority Chinese group, the majority of them Muslims, suffered as well during the massacre. One mosque was found destroyed and others found to be filled with dead bodies. Hui volunteers and imams buried over 100 of their dead following the Muslim ritual. And soon, go ahead. Sorry. I was on a roll.
Yeah, no. I had to break it up. Can't let you be too good. Soon after the fall of the city, Japanese troops made a thorough search for Chinese soldiers and summarily arrested. Summarily arrest. I knew I had it right the first time. Summarily, I messed it up again. Arrested
summarily.
arrested thousands of young Chinese men. Many were taken to Yangtze River, where they were machine gunned to death with what was probably the single largest massacre of Chinese troops. The Strog String George Massacre occurred along the banks of the Yangtze River on December 18th. For most of the morning, Japanese soldiers tied the POWs' hands together. At dusk, the soldiers divided POWs into four columns and opened fire. Unable to escape, the POWs could only scream and thrash desperately. It took an hour for the sounds of death to stop, and even longer for the Japanese to bayonet each individual. The majority of the bodies were dumped directly into the Yangtze River. Japanese troops gathered 1,300 Chinese soldiers and civilians at Tamping Gate and murdered them. The victims were blown up with landmines, then doused with petrol or gasoline, and sent ablaze. The survivors were killed with bayonets. U.S. News correspondent F. Tillman Duran and Archibald Steele reported seeing corpses of massacred Chinese soldiers forming mounds 6 feet high at the Nanjing Gate in the north. Duran, who worked for the New York Times, toured Nanking before his departure from the city. He heard waves of machine gun fire and witnessed the Japanese soldiers gunning down some 200 Chinese within 10 minutes. He would later state that he had seen tank guns used on bound soldiers. 2 days later, in the report to the New York Times, Duran stated that the alleys and streets were filled with the dead, amongst them women and children. Duran stated, "It should be said that certain Japanese units exercised restraint and certain Japanese officers tempered power with generosity and commission, but continued the conduct of the Japanese army as a whole in Nanking was a blot on the reputation of their country." Ralph L. Phillips, a missionary, testified in the U.S. Assembly Investigation Committee that he was forced to watch while Japanese disemboweled the Chinese soldiers and roasted their hearts and liver and ate them. In the first days of occupation, the soldiers took a great deal of bedding, cooking utensils, and food from the refugees. Practically every building in the city was injured many, many times by these revolving gangs of soldiers throughout the first 6 to 7 weeks of the occupation. There was no burning until the Japanese troops had been in the city 5 or 6 days. Beginning, I believe, on the 19th and 20th of December, burning was carried on regularly for 6 weeks. 1/3 of the city was destroyed as the result of arson. According to reports, Japanese troops torched newly built government buildings as well as homes of many civilians. There was one considerable destruction to areas outside the city walls. Soldiers pillaged from the poor and the wealthy alike. The lack of restraints from Chinese troops and civilians in Nanking meant the Japanese soldiers were free to divide up the city's valuables as they saw fit. The result in the widespread looting and burglary. On the December 17th, Chairman John Rabe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrote a complaint to Kayeshi Fuki, second secretary of Japanese embassy. The following is excerpt.
An excerpt, yeah. Excerpt.
In other words, on the 13th, when your troops entered the city, we had nearly all the civilians' population gravitated in the zone in which there had been very little destruction by the stray shells and No looting by the Chinese soldiers have even in full retreat. All 27 associate associate associated. Man, I am not good with words.
From the 5 Occidental members of our staff.
Occidentals.
Occidental in the city that time and our Chinese population were totally surprised by the region of robbery, raping, and killing initiated by your troops on the 14th. All we ask in our protest is that you restore order among your troops and get a normal city life going as soon as possible. In later process, we are gladly to cooperate in any way we can, but even last night between 8 and 9 p.m. when 5 man, I can't do that word.
Occidental.
Occidental members of our staff and committee touring the zone to observe conditions. We did not find any single Japanese patrol either in the zone or at the entrance.
So they basically just kind of said, eh. All right. So hold on a second here. All right, there we go. All right. I'm just making sure my camera was still on. All right. The Japanese troops did respect the zone to an extent. Now, until the Japanese occupation, no shells entered that part of the city except for a few stray shots. Now, during the chaos following the attack on the city, some were killed in the safety zone, but the crimes that occurred in the rest of the city were far greater by all accounts. Rabe wrote that from time to time the Japanese would enter the safety zone at will, carry off a few hundred men and women, and either summarily execute them or rape and then kill them. Now, by February 5th, 38, the International Committee for the Nanking Safety Zone had forwarded to the Japanese embassy a total of 450 cases of murder, rape, and general disorder by Japanese soldiers that had been reported after the American, British, and German diplomats had returned to their embassies. Case 5, on the night of December 14th, there were many cases of Japanese soldiers entering houses and raping women and or taking them away. This created panic in the area, and hundreds of women moved into the Jinling College campuses yesterday. Case 10, on the night of December 15th, a number of Japanese soldiers entered the University of Nanking buildings at Taoyuan and raped 30 women on the spot, some by 6 men. Case 13, 18 December, 4 p.m., at number 18, Holu, Japanese soldiers wanted a man's cigarette case, and when he hesitated, one of the soldiers crashed in the side of his head with a bayonet. The man is now at the university hospital and is not expected to live. Case 14, on December 16th, 7 girls aging from 16 to 21 were taken away from the military college. 5 returned. Each girl was raped 6 or 7 times daily. Case 15. About 540 refugees crowded in number 83 and 85 on Canton Road. More than 30 women and girls have been raped. The women and children are crying all nights. Conditions inside the compound are worse than we can describe. Please give us help. Case 16. A Chinese girl named Lo, who with her mother and brother was living in one of the refugee centers in the refugee zone, was shot through the head and killed by a Japanese soldier. The girl was 14 years old. The incident occurred near Kuling Seo, a noted temple on the border of the refugee zone. Case 19. January 30th, about 5 p.m., Mr. Son of the Nanking Theological Seminary was greeted by several hundred women pleading with him that they would not have to go home, or that they would not have to go home on February 4th. They said it was no use going home. They might as well just be killed for staying at the camp as to be raped, robbed, or killed at home. One old woman, 62 years old, went home near Hasimin, and a Japanese soldier came at night and wanted to rape her. She said she was too old, so the soldiers rammed a stick up her, but she survived to come back.
Jesus.
It is said that Rabe rescued between 200,000 and 250,000 Chinese people. Now, Jonathan Spence writes, there is no obvious explanation for this grim event, nor none can be found. The Japanese soldiers who had expected easy victory instead had been fighting hard for months and had taken infinitely higher casualties than anticipated. They were bored, angry, frustrated, tired. Chinese women were undefended, their menfolk powerless or absent. The war, still undeclared, had no clear-cut goal or purpose. Perhaps all Chinese, regardless of age or sex, seemed marked out as victims. The dehumanization of Chinese people in the Japanese education system is also blamed for why many ordinary soldiers were eager to engage in atrocities. Now, there are eyewitness accounts, including to include testimonies of expatriates engaged in humanitarian work, mostly physicians, professors, missionary, and businessmen. Journalists, both Western and Japanese, as well as the field diaries of military personnel. American missionary John Magee stayed behind to provide a 16-millimeter film documentary and firsthand photographs of the Nanjing Massacre. Rabe, an American missionary, Lewis C. Smythe, secretary of the International Committee and a professor of sociology at the University of Nanjing, recorded the actions of the Japanese troops and filed complaints with the Japanese embassy. Now, Matsui's reaction to the massacre began to comprehend the full extent of the rape, murder, and looting in the city. Now, he grew increasingly dismayed. He reportedly told one of his civilian aides, "I now realize that we have unknowingly wrought a most grievous effect on this city. When I think of the feelings and sentiments of many of my Chinese friends who had fled from the king and of the future of the two countries, I cannot but feel depressed. I am very lonely and can never get in a mood to rejoice about this victory. I personally feel sorry for the tragedies to the people, but the army must continue unless China repents. Now, in the winter, the season gives time to reflect. I offer my sympathy with deep emotion to 1,000,000 innocent people." On New Year's Day, over a toast, he confided to a Japanese diplomat, "My men have done something very wrong and extremely regrettable." Matsui blamed the atrocities on the morale decline of the Japanese army, saying, "The Nanking incident was a terrible disgrace." Immediately after the memorial services, I assembled the higher officers and wept tears of anger before them. As commander-in-chief, I told them that after all our efforts to enhance the imperial prestige, everything had been lost in one moment through the brutalities of the soldiers. And can you imagine it? Even after that, those soldiers laughed at me. I am really, therefore, quite happy that I, at least, should have ended this way, in the sense that it may serve to urge self-reflection on many more members of the military of the time.
In late January 1938, the Japanese army forced all refugees in the safety zone to return home, immediately claiming to have restored order after the established of the Wangzi. God, I'm not.
Baxian Zhenfu.
The collaboration of governments in 1938. Order was gradually restored in Nanking, and the atrocities by Japanese troops lessened considerably. On the February 18th, 1938, the International Committee of Nanking Safety Zone was forcibly renamed the Nanking International Rescue Community, and Safety Zone established ceased to function. The last refugee camps were closed by May 1938. In February 1938, both Prince Asoka and General Matsui were recalled to Japan. Matsui returned to retirement, but Prince Asoka remained at the Supreme War Council until the end of the war in August 1945. He was promoted to the rank of general in August 1939, although he had held no further military commands. Notorious factors complicated the estimation of the accurate death toll. According to American history, Edward J. Dray, while the Germans began in 1943, did engage in subtle efforts to elaborate evidence of such crimes as mass murder, and they destroyed a great deal of potential incriminating records in 1945. A great deal survived, in parts because not each one of the multiple copies had been burned. The situation was different in Japan between the assessment of a ceasefire in August 15, 1945, and the arrival of small advance parties of American troops in Japan on August 28. Japanese military and civilian authorities systematically destroyed military, naval, government archives, much of which was from the periods of 1942 and 1945. Now, when I actually read this, this is like the second time we've actually read this. This is just a repeat of the information. What I don't understand is if the period of 1942 and 1945 were burned and destroyed and everything like that, this stuff happened in 1938. So why is there not more documents, or they just destroyed all the documents between that time frame?
I mean, unless it came from, the emperor or somebody within the government trying to save the country from further dishonor.
Yeah. Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo dispatched enciphered messages to field commands throughout the Pacific and East Asia, ordering units to burn incriminating evidence of war crimes, especially offenses against prisoners of war. And this is what we actually stated. I don't know if it was off air. It was in the car when I was driving back up here from the other podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But we actually talked about of how much evidence, and because we hear a lot of German atrocities,
Yeah.
but we don't hear a lot of Japan's atrocities. I mean, we got I think the Unit 47 or 43 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Let me look at that real quick. Unit 731. Hold on. Let me make sure this is it. Yeah. Unit 731. That was the unit that they were basically using it what the Germans what was it? Auschwitz. But we don't hear of Japanese atrocities because they destroyed most of the information, and a lot of the medical information that we didn't go against war crimes with Japan was because of all the medical advancement and everything we got from Japan of all the information they gave us. Basically, they let go of all their information and everything just to save a little bit of face. But going back, according to Yang DeQueen, professor of history and international affairs of George Washington University, while it is stated practicing for government to destroy evidence in times of defeat in the 2 weeks before the Allies arrived in Japan, various Japanese agencies in the military in particular systematically destroyed sensitive documents to a degree perhaps unprecedented in history. Estimate of the impact of the destruction varied. Tanki Hiramont. Speaking spell. Hiromi, a professor of Japan's National Defense Academy, who conducted extensive research into the remaining Imperial Japanese Army and Navy documents in Japan and overseas, claimed that less than 0.1%, 0.1% of the material ordered for destruction survived. Wow. That's a lot of fucking information.
Yeah.
Just
I mean, I know we wanted to try to get this into one take, man, but I think we might be better served trying to break this up into two, just so that way, at the very least, we can get the aftermath, and I just just for that alone, just the aftermath, the due diligence that it needs.
yeah.
Because while there's a lot of information to digest just from the atrocities alone, just from the Nanjing Massacre alone, and then Unit 731.
Well, we can. Well, I'm not going to do Unit 731 right now. We'll do it next.
Well, we can do it next time, but I'm saying, just on the reporting and on the investigation committees and just on the trials alone.
Yeah, we can stop here for right now.
Yeah,
because in all reality, I'm
a little exhausted after reading this.
Yes, not from the whole factor of rating it and what we did, just coming from work. Is just this stuff is just god awful.
Yeah, dude, it's bad.
Yeah,
it really is. It's horrendous.
It's literally hitting my soul really hard. And I knew going over this, it was gonna hit heavy.
Yeah.
And we're only halfway done.
Yeah. I mean,
not really halfway done. We're almost done, but I'm calling
we're
it.
Closer to 3/4 of the way, but it's just, it's a lot of information just to kind of put out there. And, we invite our listeners to do their research, to get out there, to learn about this stuff.
Yeah, this is a whole.
It's hard to digest. It really is. It's hard to digest. It's like eating a bag of candy corn. It's vile. So
yeah.
Sorry, I had to put that out there. My wife and my sister-in-law, my mother, I say most. There are a lot of people that I know, my family, that love candy corn, and I cannot stand it. It's gross. It's nasty. It's vile.
It's wax.
It's flavored wax. That's what it is.
That's what it is. But anyways, everybody, we'll call it for part one. We'll get into the rest of the stuff because right now I'm really exhausted of this.
Yeah.
Just want to
nerd sports programming note, just so we can kind of go out on a little bit of a lighter note. David's been invited to a BRCC fun function at AT&T Stadium Sunday, which is...
I wasn't invited. I'm just going.
Oh, you're just going. Well, you were given an invitation. How about that? So you're going to go watch the Cowboys on kickoff weekend.
I don't think I'm going to watch it. It's at 7:20, and I got to be back by here, and I got to work the next.
So it's after the game, or no? No, it's a Sunday night game.
It's
Sunday night.
7:20.
Okay. Well,
nah.
You're going to be there, but I'm taking my wife and my sister-in-law to watch the Texans and the Colts down here in Houston. Gotta love VetTix. VetTix.org. It's VETTIX.org. Really great cause. Go in there, donate. You can either donate anonymously, or you can donate. And I think that there's some kind of tax break or whatever, not tax break, but like tax receipt that they send you. I'm not sure, but it's set up as a service for veterans. I've gone to the last few Armed Forces Bowl to watch Army play because of this because of this organization. I purchased my tickets for this Sunday's NFL kickoff game through this website as well. really, really, really love this website. I'm gonna utilize it a lot more, and I'm gonna continue my donating to it. But I mean, because there's things in there for like Baylor football tickets, Texas A&M tickets for football. And there's a lot of different other functions, like events that they do, um, like theater arts and things like that. But it's really good. It's going to be a fun weekend. So there's going to be David and I are both going to have some information that we can contribute to the show next week for Nerd Sports. I think we're going to film that Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just kind of be looking forward to that. And
go out and check out BRCC Fund. Donate there. That fund right there basically funds like a bunch of variety of charities. It's a fund for other charities, and they vet the people and everything before they send out money to them and everything. And they help out a lot. I mean, I honestly think the profits from Black Rifle Coffee is a lot smaller because all the charity funds and everything like that they send out. I think it's like 25% of their profit goes to charities or something like
that. Something like that. But yeah, we're still unpacking here. We're getting close to the end. We knocked out a huge chunk from what's been stored in the garage. We can see the garage floor. Saturday, I'm having 12 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood delivered, so that way I can measure and cut and floor in the second story attic. So that way I can create a whole bunch of space for storage. I'm going to take some insulated foam board, and I'm going to insulate the inside of the roof in that room, so that way it's not sweltering hot all the time. But
it's always attics though.
Dude, it's 350 square feet of additional space.
Damn.
Yeah, right. So, but yeah, other than that, man, I'm Johnny Skelton.
I'm David Dickerman.
And thank you for attending one of my rare here lately appearances on Psychos and Sociopaths.
Yes. Hopefully after you're done.
I promise I'll be better.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening, watching, and I'm still gonna put a disclaimer at the end of this. Please just bear with us on this one because this was a horrible one. But thank you for sticking with us up to the end on this one, and hopefully you have a good day.
All right. Peace out, everybody.
Victory!